الله أكبر حي على الصلاة الله أكبر.
Islam Wars, please be seated.
الله أكبر حي على الصلاة.
Arise, giving all praises to Allah, the Father of the universe, cherisher and sustainer of all the boundless universes. I extend the highest of honors to his holy and divine prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America. I extend high honors to his forerunner, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, who did indeed warn and stir up the nations. Islam? I extend high honors as well to the Moorish flag, the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center. These 5 points represent love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. These are the 5 highest principles known to man. Islam? Extending high honors to the American flag, also known as the Stars and Stripes. This flag exists as a constant reminder that the European nations owe you, the Moors, with compound interest. Islam? This is also the flag of our birth. Islam, Moors? Giving honor to the noble Sheik staff and noble Vanguard staff who keep the peace, and giving honors to you, the Eels and Bays, for without you, there is no Moorish movement. Islam? Praise Allah. I give honors as well to my lovely wife, Sister Sheik Heru Ranesi-El. Give honors to the sisters that are present, humanity manifest, and giving honors to tonight's holy day. Islam, Moors? Praise Allah for sending our prophet or our angel, as our 101s refer to him as. A thought of Allah manifested in human flesh to set aside a day, to reestablish a day where we can reconnect ourselves with the principles of our mothers and fathers. Islam, Moors? As the ancient Moorish American forefathers and foremothers have instructed us, have said that had the Moors not violated in ancient times Friday holy day, we would have never saw slavery. Islam, Moors? Because that which is holy must remain holy. And you must be reminded continually of what you are called to do, right? The Prophet teaches us, or instructs us, that it is not in flesh to think, and it's not in bones to reason, right? If you ask the average person, when they utter the word I, who are they referring to? You're gonna get answers relative solely to the body, right? So that's the equivalent of like you telling yourself or telling someone else that you are your car, not the driver of the car. Islam, Moors? And when you identify with solely being the physical vehicle, you miss so much, right? Because the Islam or the Islamism that we're speaking of is your nature. It's not solely just religious practice. It's not ritual. Though ritual is a byproduct of that, designed to get you back to your nature. But it's the Islam that our forefathers talked about and our foremothers talked about. It was the very nature that we were created in, the very nature of love. Which of the 5 principles is the highest vibrating principles. In fact, all the other principles spin off from love, right? Or as the Prophet Noble Drew Ali tells us, love is the pivot from which everything turns about. Islam, Moors? All right? So when you've mastered love, or like the Prophet says, instructs us, learn to love instead of hate, right? He didn't tell us that we had to learn how to hate. He already knew we were adepts at that. Proficiently masterful and skillful at hate. Islam? But if you as you're talking to your brothers and sisters out in the world, out there in the cares of the world, and you want to teach them about love, but you got to remember love is a foreign principle to them, right? You just ask them, how many of y'all know hate? Everybody's hand go up. How many people know true love? How many people in this room have truly been loved? You get this strange, I've done it. And people get to looking crazy at you, like you speaking French or some foreign language that they don't speak, But this is what we have to get people to realize, because all the high principles of nation building and all the things that we're talking about would be, very difficult to pull off or pull together if we don't have the principle of love. Islam? There's a phrase, that our forefathers, that existed in ancient times and comes up even through the modern, the phrase, word is bond. Word is bond, right? I'm from Jersey, we used to mess it up. We say word is born, because the accent. Word is born, son. But the whole phrase was, my word is my bond is my life, and I would give my life before my word shall fail, right? Meaning that this emblem here, move Old Glory to the side for a second. This emblem right here, which we know as the hand press, right? In ancient times, it's a period of time when our people vibrated so high when we didn't have to write down contracts. We didn't need them. because, it was foreign to us that a person would tell you that they would do something and not do it. That's a byproduct of the fall, right? Even, I was raised in the 70s, 80s, even back in those times, when somebody, what we said back then, shook your hand, oh man, that was everything. You know what I'm saying? Islam, you remember that, sister? Sister kind of young. I don't know if she remember that back that far. But I remember those times. You know what I'm saying? And to see us to the point where we're at now, where, we have to take each other before the European to enforce our own honor. Islam wars, all right? It shows that we are people that are devoid of love, all right? And the first principle is love. The last one is justice, right? I'd like to draw from the chapter of justice in our Quran, chapter 31. For those of you who have Qurans, please read with me. Please say Islam when you're there. Prophet refers to this as the holy instruction from the prophet, justice. Right? Chapter 31. For non-Roman readers, that is XXXI. Okay? Islam. Instruction 1. The peace of society dependeth on justice, the happiness of individuals on the safe enjoyment of all their possessions. Instruction 2, keep the desires of thy heart, therefore, within the bounds of moderation. Let the hand of justice lead them aright. Cast not an evil eye on the goods of thy neighbor. Let whatever is his property be sacred from thy touch. Let no temptation allure thee, nor any provocation excite thee to lift up thy hand to the hazard of his life. That's one instruction that if we master that right there, we wouldn't be killing each other like we are. You know what I'm saying? Because it says don't let any provocation. Like for example, in Islamic law, it's forbidden for a Muslim to take the life of another Muslim. Can't do it. Islam? So, we have to get our people, back into the structure of the rule of law. Because we've been living in an anarchy state, I'll say it that way, an anarchy state for so long, we've made that the norm. And anarchy is, I'll say as one of my Moorish elders said, anarchy is in no one's best interest. Anarchy is in no one's best interest. Instruction 5. Defame him not in his character, bear no false witness against him. Corrupt not his servant to cheat or forsake him, and the wife of his bosom, tempt not to sin. It will be a grief to his heart which thou canst not relieve, an injury to his life which no reparation can atone. Islam wars? So the Prophet is instructing us that there are certain crimes that I'm sorry ain't nothing to do with it. So no reparation can atone. There's no amount of money you can pay. There's no amount of good deeds that can make up for the fact that you've done this thing. Right? So we're being given a mode of life to keep us away from functioning in those areas where we can't forgive one another. Islam wars? All right. It says, in thy dealings with men be impartial and just, and do unto them as thou wouldst they should do unto thee. So the golden rule was brought back to you by Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Yes, our forefathers had it. In every Asiatic culture on earth, that rule exists, right? But because we have been disconnected to the Prophet, Allah made sure the Prophet brought it back to us, all right? And, that's the principle of equity, or that is the principle of justice as well, right there, Instruction 8, right? Instruction 9, be faithful to thy trust, and deceive not the man who relieth upon thee. Be assured it is less evil in the sight of Allah to steal than to betray. Oppress not the poor, and defraud not of his hire the laboring man. When thou sellest for gain, hear the whispering of conscience, and be satisfied with moderation. Nor from the ignorance of the buyer make any advantage. Pay the debts which thou owest, for he who gaveth thee credit relieth upon thine honor, and to withhold from him his due is both mean and unjust. Islam wars? Had we been raised on that principle right there and lived accordingly, lived the life accordingly, everybody in here would have a AAA credit rating. Y'all be all 800 plus, beacon scores and all that type of stuff, and we can go get whatever we needed to get for the nation. However, we were raised as Negroes, blacks, and coloreds, and we shake these things off as we come into the Moorish Science Temple of America to learn how to be honorable. Islam? So there's no more running up credit and not paying it off. That's stuff we learned as Negroes. You have to leave that at the door. Islam says, in the last instruction, finally, O son of society, examine thy heart, call remembrance to thy aid, and if in any of these things thou hast transgressed, make a speedy reparation to the utmost of thy power. And note that it says, that's the caveat, right? To the utmost of thy power, because he mentioned one, there's no forgiveness for it. Right? So do your very best. All right? Now, why is any of this important? Let me just put that to the floor. Why is any of that important? The floor is open. Why would the prophet feel the need to instruct us regarding these things?
Islam.
Islam, what?
I rise giving all praise to Allah and the highest of honor to his noble divine prophet, Drew Ali.
Islam, what you recognize?
Islam. Islam in chapter 31, the prophet is connecting us back to our forefathers.
Yes.
And putting us back in that state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that golden rule, which is stated in all of our books of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Do unto thyself, do unto others as thou would have them do unto you.
Islam.
And so that just again harkens that golden thread.
Mm-hmm. Islam. Thank you, brother. Anyone else? Can I hear from the sisters? Humanity. Anyone? Why would the Prophet Noble Drew Ali feel the need to bring these things, these instructions back to us, specifically in that chapter of the things that were covered? Whatever's comfortable for you. So you're our visitor, so we ain't gonna put no pressure on you.
Okay. Character and integrity above anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't walk in those principles of justice if your character and integrity are not in alignment.
Wow.
And you can't even serve Allah if your character and integrity are not. When are you going to pray?
Islam.
Where is the consistency? Who are you accountable to? So if your character and integrity are not in alignment, then everything else is going to be what we used to call shady.
That's right. That's right. Praise Allah. You know, integrity is an interesting word because they even utilize that in, you know, let's say if it was a ship and the ship ran into a rock or something, you know, and the first thing the captain is going to ask, well, what's the integrity of the ship? So, you know, the consistency, right? Or, you know, how solid is the ship? Can we continue? So most of our integrity, most of us, many of our people don't have integrity. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that makes it impossible, like, you know, all the potential entrepreneurs we have amongst our race, you know. I mean, that seed is definitely in us, right? But how difficult would it be to go forward in business if you don't have integrity? You know, your word is everything, you know, in business. You know, a lot of businesses was made, I'm a barber by trade, and my business was solely made on word of mouth. You know, people I've made flyers before and done that word of mouth for me. Word of mouth is everything, trumps everything. You know, somebody will come in, somebody referred me to you and said that, you know, the environment's great, it's peaceful, I can bring my children, y'all don't cuss and act a fool, you know? And that's my word, you see what I'm saying? It's an extension of my word in the business, you see? But flip that, if you don't have integrity, then it affects you in a negative manner, you know? I'd like to draw from something in chapter 48, which is labeled the end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies, right? And what I'd like to do at this point is kind of bring in, you know, from the divine side into the national. You know, this is being, you know, a religious organization. People tend to forget that, you know, there's a national side, you know, of what we're called to do. There's a civic side of what we're called to do. But these very same instructions that we're brought tie into that, right? But in chapter 48, instructions 10 and 11, just two, the last two instructions. Prophet Noble Drew Ali stated, and this is actually when he first got to Chicago in 1925, this is what he used to call people to rally the people around the statement. He says, "Come all ye Asiatics of America, and hear the truth of your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We are trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come and link yourselves with the families of nations. We honor all the true and divine prophets." Islam, Morris? The interesting part about that last statement is the fact that the families of nations. Anybody tell me when the United Nations was formed?
And I'm a part of the United Nations.
37.
A little bit later.
24.
A little bit later. 1945.
45.
The League of Nations, which was the first United Nations, that was like the 19 teens, like the early teens, like 17 or something like that. Had a lot of flaws in it, so they had to redo the charter and get the language right. Because again, you know, you have to remember, language is key to everything. Prophet Noble Drew Ali, like people ask the Moors, this is funny. Well, if y'all your own nationality, well, what's the Moorish language? I hold up the Quran. This is my language. I speak fluent Holy Quran of Moorish Science Temple of America. Fluent. Fluent. Because if you doubt it's its own language, like my brother right here, brother Bailey-El, brother Jamar Bailey-El, me and this Moor right here can go on a conversation using this language, and the average person has no idea what we're talking about. It's its own language, animo. Oh man, we take it high. We lead a form. We ascend to our Father God Allah. But it's its own language, it's its own culture, so on and so forth. But I digress. So dealing with the family of nations, peace. Now, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, we say prophet, right? What other titles was Noble Drew Ali known by? So we have prophet. What else was he known by?
Egyptian adept.
An Egyptian adept student. Professor, because that was the title, and then, right? So professor, prophet, what else? Clearly noble, right? Right? And in the early days under the Canaanite temple, he was known as doctor, right? Dr. Drew, he used to call. He's taking remedies that he learned from India and was healing people in Newark, New Jersey, right? So, point is that the title prophet was a degree that he was utilizing, but people, if you're not aware of the timeline in which he's doing things, you won't see the prophecies go down. He was saying family of nations before the United Nations even came together. Islam wars, there was no United Nations at that point. So he's throwing it out there, you know, and he's telling us, he's coming to us first to get us ahead of the curve of something that was about to happen in the world. Islam wars, had we had it together, because we fell apart once he left the form, because at that time we was in a state where we needed our God that we could see. That's pretty much the state we're kind of still in, right? But when the Prophet left the body, a lot of our people, they, you know how like the old plows, you had the ox or something. A lot of people, when the Prophet left the farm, they just dropped the plow and just walked off the farm. You see what I'm saying? But the reality of it is, if you charge to this work, you hold on to what we refer to as the gospel plow, right? But the point is now, going back to the family of nations, right? Somebody tell me something about the United Nations. Anybody? What kind of organization is it?
Rising gives praise to Allah, the author, governor, eternal, and comprehensible.
Islam.
Absolute. And highest of praise to his prophets, love, thought, made manifest, and what you are leading.
Islam, you recognize?
It is a organization which seeks to, by means of leadership of all different countries, manage, control, and uplift, in terms of progress for world issues. So it would be like a format for all nations to have an input on what goes on in the world and how.
Islam, praise Allah. So, the phrase that's on the back of your dollar bill, the Novus Ordo Seclorum, right? Which everybody has spooked out in Illuminati and X, Y, and Z, right? People terrified of it. The reality of it is that New World Order, right, or that New Order of the world was not started by the Europeans. It was started by the Moors in ancient times, right? If you look at what the Islamic Empire represented, if I could go over to the map real quick. All right, Moors were in Morocco, right? But don't get caught up on these boundaries, because these boundaries that they're just calling countries in Africa today have only been there since 1885, the Berlin Conference. Okay, that was when Europeans got together and along the lines of their colonial economic interests carved up Africa. So the French had, this is the French territory, this is Italy here, no, this is France as well, Italy, British here, Mauritania is going down to various other European nations, whatever. But the point is that the northern and northwestern Africa was all Moorish territory, right? But as Islam began to spread, it went all up into China. Right now there's like 2 million Muslims in China. You know what I'm saying? Like one of my customers just got back from Mecca from the Hajj. Hajj just happened. And he was, he had video of the Chinese Muslims making Hajj and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? It was a beautiful thing. But all down in India, down in Sri Lanka, down in southern India right here, there's a group of Moors right now called the Ceylon Moors, C-E-Y-L-O-N. For those taking notes, write it down. C-E-Y-L-O-N. the Ceylon Moors. They're Indian, right? But they wear fezzes, right? They have similar, traditional practices as brothers and sisters in Morocco, Islam. If I was to go to Cambodia, Vietnam, right? There's a group of Muslims over here that have taken and mixed Brahmanism, which is Hinduism, and Islam together. You know what I'm saying? So they've set up certain things that generally don't exist in normal Islam, like a priesthood, because they get that from Hinduism, and so on and so forth. So they've mixed the two because they accepted Islam, but they still held on to they honored their forefathers, Islam. So point is that all through wherever Islam went, it weaved together a network, of brothers and sisters that were on a one governance type of thing. So you'll see sultans from Morocco all the way, India, Brunei, all the way through, right? All up in India, the Mughal dynasty of India, of Hindu brothers, right? Well, actually Muslim brothers that ruled India. They were actually a Muslim minority, but ruled India, right? They were the ones that brought in the, like the turbans and the silk and the pearls on the turban, all that type of stuff. The Sikhs, y'all familiar with the Sikhs? S-I-K-H. They're the ones that wear turbans and long beards, but are not Muslim, right? Islam. But the Sikhs are, a spin-off. They picked up the wearing of the turban from the Muslims that were in the Mughal dynasty, right? Why am I telling you all this? All this constituted a new world order in that day and time, right? How many people familiar with the Silk Road? You heard of that? The Silk Road? Silk Road was a commercial trade route that went all through, what you have now as Europe, but which was in ancient times, Asia, all the way across Asia. But what happens is it linked up with the Trans-Saharan trade route right in this area here. So the Trans-Saharan trade route was coming across here, this way, you know what I'm saying? So, brothers and sisters all in northern and northwestern Africa came across this way, linked up with the Silk Road and traded this way. So this was one commercial dynasty, right? Before the Europeans came to power, okay? So, when the Europeans demonstrating, this whole concept of a one world government and all this type of stuff, this is something that we've been working on for a long time. All they did was continue the work, right? And we charged them, during our fall to continue the work, right? And to keep certain things. So, why the prophet tell you, to learn to love instead of hate. You have a lot of allies that you don't know about that are Europeans, but they're not going to tell you that because they're watching. The more, hit a powerful demonstration about observance. They're not watching what you say, they're watching what you do. More importantly, they're watching how we treat our women. Islam? So if a group of brothers go to the UN, right, and I had this, conversation with some Moors that went. They went and, we want our rights to be recognized, and the people at the UN heard them out. They said, well, where are your women? Islam? Because if I want to see who you are, where's your woman at? Where's your wife? Because she'll tell me all about, without even saying nothing, who you are. Islam was? Prophet says, take unto thyself a wife and obey the ordinance of Allah. Take unto thyself a wife and become a faithful member of society. Go back to the last instruction and justice. He calls you, O son of society, right? If you do all these things, you are now part of the society, right? So now, all the family of nations is, nations are societies, right? Under national law, a nation's national law is called their municipal law. Write that down. Municipal law, okay? Now, international law cannot trump municipal law. All they can do is suggest, right? So let's say there's some human rights abuses going on in a particular nation. The international law, even like right now, the United Nations does not have the power to go in with a military and invade that nation. They don't have that power. What they can do is they can come on the floor of the United Nations and condemn, right? And they could put pressure on the various different countries that they trade with to put sanctions on, right? How many people have heard the word tariff before? T-A-R, what is a tariff?
Sanction on goods.
Islam. Where does the word tariff come from?
Islamic.
Islamic. It's literally named after one of your Moorish forefathers named Tarif. I'll get into that. Tarif worked for Tariq. Okay? But Tarif, his name is T-A-R-I-F, Ibn Malik. M-A-L-I-K. Tarif Ibn Malik. Tarif Ibn Malik was the one, y'all have heard about the Moors invading Spain, 711 AD. Everybody knows that, right? But your forefathers being, military geniuses, they never just ran inside of a nation. They always sent, a scout party first. Tardif ibn Malik was the one who, was a part of a scout party that took like 300 Moors first to go test the battle readiness of the Iberian Peninsula. So in other words, if we run in there, well, what's going to happen? Very bold, brother, because that took some heart, because he didn't know what was over there, right? He came back and brought a bunch of spoils back, so on and so forth. So much so, they brought so much, spoils back, they named, the taxation that they would put on other nations, tarifs. Or they say now tarif. If you listen to CNN, and when they talk about international, the word tariff comes up like 100 times a day. Islam, but again, going back to your forefathers, tarif, right? Now, family of nations. So now, the family of nations has a body of law called international law, right? Now, international law is something, let's do this. When the Europeans first overthrew the Moors, right, in 1492, right, there was a scramble to translate the books that we had in the empire. What was the first book that the Europeans needed and wanted to translate? They said, we gotta translate this one above all others. What book was that? Quran. The Quran of Mecca, right? Sheik, the Quran. They had to do this because they said, if they built that empire off of being inspired by that, we need to understand that Shukran Jazilan, right? So, and as you see, this has been read to death. I apologize, right? But this is this book right here, because in this text right here, like example, I like to give the example all the time. If, Allah forbid, the society out here completely collapsed, right? Nothing. There's no infrastructure due to whatever, right? So there's no one you can go to enforce your contractual disputes. There's no one to go to when the husband's not taking care of his obligations with the child, right? What do you go to enforce those laws? What body of laws are you going to use to govern yourselves, right? Well, exactly. Well, you have to be careful with that term, and I'll get to that in a minute. I'll get to that. It's a good answer, though. The essence of that is this, right? Where that term goes wrong is when they take and say Sharia law is this plus hadith, or what they say, the sunnah, right? If you ask Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, what is your greatest miracle? He says, receiving this. He didn't say walking on water. He didn't say, they have a hadith that said Prophet Muhammad pointed at the moon and the moon split in half. Then he pointed again and it came back. All that was written after he died. So what happens is, a lot of times the different schools of thought in the broader Islamic world, they've written these hadith to justify changing this. So they'll quote hadith, which means tales of men, right? And which this says, it is the best of hadith, right? It says it is the best of hadith because it was received by a man. Allah teaches man through Islam, right? So this is the best of hadith. So if anything, we should rely always on the words of Allah, right? And we have to delineate the words of Allah from the words of men. Like if we would look in the New Testament of the Bible, right? They say with the New Testament, that's Jesus' works. Just Jesus, no, not necessarily. Because it says the gospel according to Matthew. The gospel according to Luke. And if you read Luke 1, Luke says the other ones wrote gospel, so it seemed good to me also, so I wrote one. That's vanity. That ain't divine inspiration. Islam. The book of Revelations 1:1 talks about, it coming directly to Jesus through John, signified by the angel. You see what I'm saying? But the point is that this book right here inspired the legal, things that the Europeans had gone into later. So that was the first book they translated, first into Latin, right? And it was the Catholic priest that translated it. So when they translated it, the title they gave it was a slanderous title. It was Lex Pseudo Propheta, right? Which means the fake law of the prophet. Lex means law, pseudo, right? Propheta, prophet. They had to do that because they couldn't let the Pope know that they were studying the Quran. Islam? Y'all familiar with Freemasonry, right? In the Catholic Church, Freemasonry is forbidden. So they have their own order that they set up called the Order of Alhambra, right? And they wear white fezzes with a tower on it, right? And the tower, there's a crescent and like a sword on it and stuff like that. And it's just them commemorating the fact that we got overthrown in 1492. That's why I named my publishing company Alhambra Publishing. We'll take that back, right? But the point is that, it was your forefathers and foremothers that set international law up to begin with, right? Now, we had various different European students. Because remember, we got defeated in 1492. That don't mean you was totally taken out of power. You were still the scholars. You were still wealthy. You were still in the country. You hadn't got kicked out to 1610. Islam, you know, like we give the example all the time. Columbus came over here, Nina the Pinta, Santa Maria and all that, with Moorish navigators. You see what I'm saying? Kind of similar to if you wanted to go rent a car, you go to Enterprise, where the Moors owned all the boats. So they still had to go to us. We had all the maps, right? You know, so this was the type of setup, right? So now, having these various different European students, we taught them various different things. Like they came into our universities and saw something round that had an arc type of thing connected to it with a base. And they said, well, what's that? They said, it's a globe. And they said, what's that? We said, that's the Earth. And they were like, no, it can't be. The Earth is flat. We're like, nah, yeah, we kind of lied to you about that.
Right.
You know it was your forefathers that told them that, right? Because if you think the Earth is flat, you'll only sail out so far before you think you're gonna fall off, right? And you wouldn't come into the real Moorish Empire, which was over here. So they'd sail out over here and see like a school of dolphin, see dragons and turn back and go back, right? So our goal was to keep them away from this. Especially here, this is where all the gold was, right? Read the stories of a European conqueror named Pizarro, right? Pizzaro. It's funny, I'm a comic book fan. Superman's nemesis that lived on the other side of the sun was a Bizarro. I don't know why I said that out loud. But when Pizarro went to South America, right, they brought back tons of gold. Like it was ridiculous. You know, matter of fact, ironically, the ruler that was down in South America amongst the Incas was named Tupac. That's where Tupac gets his name from, right? The Moorish ruler down in South America, right? But anyway, right? So like I'm saying, so we had various different European students that we pulled aside, right? Because here's how the Moors taught. We would look, you know, and look at the natural inclinations of children, right? And say, you know, this one's, you know, like has the building blocks and it's just building different blocks and stuff. He might put him with the builders. You know, this one's good with calculations, put him with the mathematicians. That's how we built. So we looked at various different European, you know, children and said, okay, well, these ones are good, these various different things. So we had these different students. Chapter 17 of the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America tells you that there was a silent brotherhood of Greece. There was a silent brotherhood of Rome. There was a silent brotherhood in Egypt, so on and so forth. There were silent brotherhoods all over the earth. Again, dealing with the family of nations, but on a sacred, silent, and secret society. Nothing new to us. We've always, you know, we always needed to know how to identify our brothers and sisters by night and by day, right? So there were always passwords. There was always a hand press. You know, there was always something so I can know who you really are. Like we were talking about that language earlier. Islam, all right? So now, some European students. Let me give you some European students of the Moors. Write these down for those taking notes. Hugo Grotius, H-U-G-O, Grotius, G-R-O-T-I-U-S. Another one would be Montesquieu, named M-O-N-T-I-S-Q-U-I-E-U, Montesquieu, Q-U-I-E-U, Montesquieu. Another one, John Locke. Locke with an E on the end. Another one, Thomas Hobbes, T-H-O-M-A-S, Hobbes, H-O-B-B-E-S. And I'll give you one more, Niccolo Machiavelli, right? Author of The Prince, right? You know, is it better to be loved or be feared? Which the Prophet answered that in the Quran too, but from a Moorish perspective. But these were all students. They took bits and pieces of what the sultans taught their sons, what the sultans taught the princes. That's why Machiavelli's book is called The Prince, because this was something that was only taught from father to son to keep the rulership, right? One of these students, I have to give you one more for this reference. His name was Emmerich de Vattel, E-M-M-E-R-I-C-H. Next word, lowercase d, E. Next word, capital V-A-T-T-E-L. Emmerich de Vattel, right? Emmerich de Vattel authored a book called The Law of Nations, right? It's 2 volumes, huge. It's one of Sister Lamadia's favorite books. Law of Nations, is that right? Islam, right? But this is one that Hugo Grotius wrote called On the Law of War and Peace, right? So what they were doing was they were taking different treaties or different writings that were written by the Moors and translating them for themselves and doing commentaries on these things. That's what this is, right? This one right here, this is chapter 11, and this is on promises, right? Now promises doesn't seem like it would be something like a legal. Why would we have to write something from a legal perspective on promises? But as you'll see, it's very important. And I'm just going to kind of jump around in it. You can, the PDFs online. You can download the whole book and do that for your own studies. But I'll just go in. It says, the course of the subject next leads to an inquiry into the obligation of promises, where the first object that presents itself is the opinion of Franciscus Comnenus, a man of no ordinary learning. He maintains an opinion that the law of nature and of nations does not enforce the fulfillment of those agreements which do not include an express contract. So there's a point in time where people fell to the point where they needed to write stuff down in order to be held by it. Yet the fulfillment of them is right in cases where even without a promise, the performance would be consonant to virtue and equity. In support of his opinion, he brings not only the sayings of lawyers, but likewise the following reasons. He says that the person who makes and he who believes a rash promise are equally to blame. For the fortunes of all men would be in imminent danger if they were bound by such promises, which often proceed from motives of vanity. We demonstrated that on Sunday school, of vanity rather than from a settled deliberation, reason, right? And are the result of a light and inconsiderate mind. Lastly, the performance of whatever is in any way just in itself ought to be left to the free will of everyone and not exacted according to rigid rules of necessity. Write this Latin term down, necessitas, which is Necessitas, non, N-O-N, next word habet, H-A-B-E-T, next word legum, L-E-G-U-M, necessitas non habet legum, which means necessity has no laws, right? There's something in the Constitution of the United States known as the necessary and proper clause. Anywhere in law, especially dealing with the European here in America, when you see that word necessary, that ain't nothing to play with. What do they call that when the government comes to take eminent domain? Comes out of the necessary and proper clause, where they can just, we deem it necessary that we have this land, so that justifies them, right? So, necessary is a master's word. It ain't nothing to play with. It's serious, right? So anytime you hear it, make sure you pay attention to that, right? He says that it is shameful not to fulfill promises, not because it is unjust, but because it argues a levity in making them. So the mere fact that you made a promise without the intention of doing it makes the very promise a light thing, and to approach it from that perspective is savage. Islam says, editor's note, all of the reasons of Grotius, I gave you a reference to him, all of the reasons of Grotius on this and on every other point are intended to apply not only to the transactions of individuals, but to the conduct and affairs of nations. Islam. So the same rules of interaction that we have to use for each other, that's what it takes to rule and govern a nation. Islam. So if we don't get these down, y'all can chuck ruling a nation. So these settings are where we master running a nation. Islam wars? Moving forward, it says, in support of his opinion, he appeals also to the testimony of Tully. Write that down. He's another European student. T-U-L-L-Y, who has said that those promises are not to be kept which are prejudicial to the person to whom they are made, nor if they are more detrimental to the giver than beneficial to the receiver, right? But if the performance of an engagement is begun upon the strength of a promise, but not finished, he does not require complete fulfillment of the promise, but only some of the compensation to the party for the disappointment. Agreements, he continues, have no intrinsic force of obligation, but only what they derive from express contracts in which they are included, or to which they are annexed from the delivery of the thing promised. But it is through favor of the laws alone which give efficacy of obligation to what is only fair and equitable in itself, that obligatory agreements such as express covenants and other things of that kind derive their force. Prophet Noble Drew Ali gives you a holy covenant of the Asiatic nations. Islam? He tells you about the great covenant of the great God Allah, the covenant of the great God Allah. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days be long upon the earth's land, which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee, Islam. So we have the concept of covenants, but again, we only look at it from a religious perspective, not realizing religion is law and law is government. Islam, Morris? Anybody have any questions so far? All right, moving forward. It says, this is an opinion confirmed by the wisdom of all ages, for as it is said by legal authorities, that since nothing is so consonant to natural justice as for the will of an owner freely transferring his property to another. Let me stop there. Somebody get me the chapter of Justice 31 we just read. Okay. Somebody have it?
It's not.
Can somebody read the first instruction for me?
The peace of society depends on justice, the happiness of individuals on the safe enjoyment of all their possessions.
They're just demonstrating this right here, the same thing the Prophet just told us right here in international law. Islam? All right. It says, to be confirmed, so nothing is more conducive to good faith among men than a strict adherence to the engagements they have made with each other. Thus, a legal decision for the payment of money where no debt has been incurred except by the verbal consent of the party promising is thought conformable to natural justice. Paulus the lawyer also says, he was a Roman, Paulus the lawyer also says that the law of nature and the law of nations agree in compelling a person who has received credit to payment. In this place, the word compelling signifies a moral obligation. If you do the etymology on compel, it literally means to push, right? I'll give you an example of compelling, to compel. Salvation, Allah, Unity, Moorish Science Temple of America, the Divine Constitution and Bylaws, Act 7. All members must promptly attend their meetings and become a part and parcel of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all the necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of uplifting fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. Islam, then he follows up, this divine covenant is a contract, right? It's from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his father, God Allah. Islam? So in proclaiming one's nationality and coming in, you're binding yourself to a contract where your performance is being compelled from a divine source to act a certain way. Islam, Morris? All right, let's move forward. Tully, in his first book of offices, assigns such force to the obligation of promises that he calls fidelity. Write that down. That's another master's word. Fidelity, right? The word fidelity comes from the root word fides, which is F-I-D-E-S, right? The emblem for fides is this right here, the hand press. This is the symbol for fidelity, okay? Fidelity is also known as what? Loyalty, right? Also what? Faithfulness. Islam? What's the highest title in the Moorish Science Temple of America? Faithful. It's not Grand Sheik, it's not, whatever else. It's faithful, which also means loyal. Islam? He says, which Horace also styles as the sister of justice. So they, there's one Greek individual who referred to fidelity as the sister of justice. And the Platonists, the students of Plato said, also called justice truth. Sounded like our 5 principles, ain't it? All right? Called justice truth, which Apellius has translated as fidelity, and Simonides has defined justice to be not only returning what one has received, but also speaking the truth. Islam, Morris? Right? Moving down, it says, for the human mind has not only a natural power, but a right to change its purpose. Prophet says the wise man changes his mind often, right? It says, wherefore, if any blame attaches to a change of opinion or purpose, it is not to be imputed to the bare act of changing, but to the circumstances under which it happens, especially when the former resolution was the best. All right? Move forward. Okay. All right, let me do this. Okay, this section says, after knowing this, there remains no difficulty in relying to the arguments of Cananus, for the expressions of the lawyers respecting bare promises refer only to what was introduced by the Roman laws, which have a formal stipulation, the undoubted sign of a deliberate mind. Bare promises. A bare promise is an empty promise. Bare promise is one that, one would make with no intention of keeping, right? Bare promises is 180 degrees from the word vow. right? And a vow is a solemn pledge. See, as Moorish Americans, we're forbidden from taking oaths, right? But vows are just fine, Islam, because a vow is a sacred pledge or solemn pledge before Allah. Jesus took a solemn pledge or a vow of the Silent Brotherhood, chapter 13. Islam Moors, and it says he had to go and clothe himself in the proper garb, which is dual meaning, right? And then stand before the Grand Hierophant, to receive instruction, all right? But he took a vow, a certain sacred vow that he took, all right? A semblance of that is when one proclaims a nationality. You know what I'm saying? The demonstration of the nationality card is somewhat of a vow because it binds you by the God of our forefathers, Allah. Islam, right? And I'll just hit this one sentence right here, and it says, the next matter to be considered is what are the requisites to constitute a perfect promise. A perfect promise is vow. Islam, so at law, they'll call a perfect promise a vow. Islam Moors? Anybody have any questions? At this point, I'd like to demonstrate the forerunner of our prophet, brother, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, in his book, Message to the People, The Course in African Philosophy, right? This is in the chapter, The Social System, and it's in the article entitled Political Pull, right? Because again, I felt the need to prepare the ground relative to even talking about politics, right? Because if you don't have honor, if you don't have, like the sister demonstrated, integrity, character, so on and so forth, you can't get in this game. Islam Moors? Don't look at the corruption that one's doing there. They ain't got nothing to do with you, right? When you get involved in that, you have to come from it from a character and integrity perspective. Islam? There's a brother, he was the former mayor of Detroit, brother Kwame Kilpatrick. Young brother, man. This brother, I think he became mayor like 33, you know what I'm saying? Within the first 6 months of being mayor, he balanced the budget of Detroit in 6 months. Brother was phenomenal, but he got tripped up under, trying to do the things that former mayors had done, right? And again, him should have known better because his mother was a politician. So she groomed him, but he, young, lack of experience in that particular field, right? The forerunner says, Marcus Garvey, political pull. He says, politics is the science of government that protects those human rights that are not protected by law. Law is already established. Politics adds to the laws or change the laws. You should play politics to get good government. Islam? So if anybody comes to you talking about what Marcus Garvey said, and they're not talking about politics, then they playing you. Because this is what he stood on. He said, the state, nation, or the community in which you live directly is always governed by politicians or statesmen. You should know them and become well acquainted with them for your own good. You need them in trouble and out of trouble. I would lend that it's best to get to know them when you're out of trouble. Because nobody wants somebody knocking at their door talking about, I need something. That's always turned down, right? It says, always try to know the mayor of your city and the government of your state, island, or country. Try to know the other government officials also. To know them before you have trouble is to get help when you are in trouble. Not to know them is to be at a disadvantage when you are brought before them. Always treat them courteously, like the prophet says, speaking in an intelligent tone, right? Always treat them courteously and friendly, even if you don't mean it. You have to learn how to pull it out. Islam? Always let them believe that you are friendly. If you are to be a leader in your community, this makes it even more imperative that you know everybody of political consequence, because you will have to approach them not only for yourself and for the organization, but for the members of the race who look up to you as their leader. You must never sell yourself to the politician. I'm gonna say that again. You must never sell yourself to the politician. You must get around him in the most skillful manner. Get all your rights and all the rights of others dependent upon you out of him without selling yourself to him, to keep him in office, especially if he is not a good man in the community. Always make your vote count for bringing about the reforms you and others think are right for your community. Never exchange it for money. You should see that every citizen that has a vote does vote on an election day, especially when you have reforms to be enacted. Whatever the conditions, you may parts of. Whatever the conditions may be that give you suffrage, which means to vote, the right to vote, live up to those conditions and maintain and hold suffrage just at that time when your vote is most needed, may be at the time when you are not qualified to vote because of your carelessness. In countries where as a race you are not allowed to vote, always work to get the vote by way of reform. And that's, for me, that speaks to me in the sense of, how brothers are, as using the chairman's word, disenfranchised because they may have caught a felony. But if they've served their time and paid their debt to society, their rights should be restored. Florida's working on that right now, right? But that's something that we definitely have to get behind. Islam Moors? Between that and the right to bear arms, because you need the right to defend yourself. Islam, Brother Chairman.
Praise and the highs of honor to His Holy and Divine Prophet, Noble Drew Ali.
Islam,
I just want to add on to your statement that you had about brothers in prison being disenfranchised.
Yes.
In our mother country of Ghana,
Yes.
they actually allow the inmates to vote during elections.
Wow.
Because at this moment even though they have committed a error, they're still considered citizens, and them being incarcerated, if you will, is an act towards rehabilitation. So being that they're being rehabilitated, they still act as citizens of society.
Right.
Islam.
Islam, praise Allah. The wild part about it, the word penitentiary comes from the word penance, or to make amends or to pay back. I remember years ago, brothers, you'd be able to go in an institution and come out with college degrees and all kind of, they're cutting them programs out if they haven't cut them out nationwide now. You know what I'm saying? So it's not a place of that. You know what I'm saying? It's a place of something else. You know what I'm saying? Where we have to reform our brothers when they come home. You know what I'm saying? Because, that's another thing. I was watching, it was a series of, of interviews on a particular podcast that I watched. And there was, a lot of brothers who had, they were being interviewed who had done, like 30 plus years in prison. They had just came home. One brother, he had just been home like 35 days off 31 years. You know what I mean? And, he was demonstrating. He was like, he said, I need help. You know what I'm saying? It's like, he said, my whole view and approach of how I deal with everything, especially aggression, is violence. You know what I'm saying? Because the environment I was in, that's what it was for 31 years. Islam Wars, So, the Prophet gives us another master's word in the divine warning. He said, we advocate peace and not destruction. But that word advocate, or where they put another, another pronunciation term, advocate, that's what Moorish Americans should be for our people. We're advocates, and we advocate for certain principles, right? And those principles are to be found in our Quran, Islam, our holy Quran. Islam Moors? Moving forward, I'm almost finished here. It says, in countries where as a race you are not allowed to vote, always work to get the vote by way of reform. Use the help of everybody, but have political power to bring about the changes that will get you the vote. Otherwise, you will be governed without your consent. Some would call that assumable jurisdiction, but I don't want to start that. We're not going there tonight. To vote is to make the attempt to share in the government of the community. You should never be a political slave in a community because others will take advantage of you. The Prophet calls that the political slave a political beast of burden, or belated beast of burden. He says, always cast your ballot for good government. Never support a corrupt government. Islam Wars? And that means also, even if it appears to be Asiatic, that don't mean nothing. Respectfully, I say this, that, under President Obama's administration, there was a lot of corruption going on, and nobody speaks about it because he looks like us, and we have to be more, how can I say, mature in our worldview, because as we step in these things, that's a realm that if you're not accustomed to it, you'll get swindled real easily. You know what I mean? Or if you don't have integrity and you come in there and they see that you can be bought, what they'll do is they'll just show you more money than you've ever seen in your life. And I'm like, well, what do you think about this? And if you can be bought, they have these little memes they put up on social media that say something like, would you slap your mama for $20 million? Of course not. There's no money you can offer me to slap my mother. But a lot of our people will fail that test. You're aware of that, correct? Some of our people can be bought. And that's a problem because if you can be bought for any amount, then we can't trust you. Islam? Because that means you're down until the right number comes. Islam? So, the more science of America is where you come to figure out, how to tap into the true you, how to bypass the body, because man himself is not the body nor the soul, but he is a spirit and a part of Allah. And that's the real you, right? When the Prophet talks about, being various and wavering and inconstant and unstable, demonstrating instability, he's talking about the physical part of you, which is not you, right? Even Moorish American, this is the holy day, right? Even Moorish American is finite to a degree, because that's still dealing with the body. Islam is governed by divine principles, but we're talking about physical ancestry, or we say descent nature, right? But the essence of who you are is divine. That's the thing that governs our movements, right? That's why this here is at the top of the charter, right? Because Allah, his providence rules over all, right? So, the Prophet gives us a degree of the mole, right? He said he worketh in the dark, right? And fancy that he is safe. When he lifts his head up, everybody sees he got dirt on his head. Islam? I was reading one of our Moorish elders. Everybody write this name down for those taking notes. Sheik, S-H-E-I-K. The first letter R, period. Edwards-El. You can reach him on Facebook. And he put together this masterful text known as the Muqarrabeen Files. M-U-Q-A-R-R-A-B-E-E-N. And my elder was the co-author to this, Sheikh James Barnes Bey. He comes in and blesses our temple with his presence from time to time. But this is like 100 years of Moorish history. You see the thickness of it, right? And it's not a game. It has like the actual documents and everything, whatever. Just to give you an example of some of the things, they did a questionnaire thing in here. So Brother Sheikh Raphael Bey was asking me about the other day. It's like 160 some odd questions, but they deal with some interesting things relative to El and Bey and the names and stuff like that. It says question 116, if El and Bey connects you with the human race and the families thereof, what race are you and from what family are you a descendant? Answer, we are of the Asiatic race and of the royal family of Boaz and Ruth. 117, doesn't the Christian names have an ill effect on the consciousness of the Moorish Americans? Answer, Moorish Americans do not have Christian names. 118, isn't the name Johnson a Christian name? Answer, Johnson is a European name. Since the Christian church has its origin in Europe, every baptized Christian assumes a European name, especially if the convert has been educated in the West. 119, when an American of African descent bears the name Jones, doesn't this demonstrate the names that were given to slaves by slaveholders? Answer, no. The names that were given to slaves by slaveholders were Negro, black, colored, etc. 120, if those names such as Jones, Thomas, Johnson, etc. are not slave names, then why does history reveal that many slaves were known or by these names? Answer, a closer examination of history will reveal that it was through these names that the slave master was able to identify his property. The names meant nothing to the slaves except to symbolize his spiritual and national death. 121, how could a Moorish American be spiritual and nationally dead claim consciousness? Answer, all life comes from death. With the addition of El or Bey, these names symbolize the resurrection of the dead, the return of the knowledge of their creator and national origin. And I just stopped there, but I give honors to my forefathers. Because like stuff like this constitutes a continuation of history. That's one of the ways that nationality is also defined, or nation. To be a nation, you have to have a continuity of history, right? You have to be able to continually trace yourself back. The Prophet tells us that backwards through the ages, masterminds trace themselves and thus they know, right? So you have to be able to go back through the ages and find you. Islam? So praise Allah for every generation post Noble Drew Ali, for the Moorish American forefathers and foremothers that picked up the pen and documented from their understanding what the Prophet demonstrated. Islam? Because we have lessons to pull from, right? Like in Mali, like I use this example all the time. In Mali, there was like 1 million manuscripts found buried under the ground. Every subject known to man, astronomy, mathematics, you name it, right? All were inspired by this record here, the Holy Quran of Mecca. You see what I'm saying? So in those manuscripts, had we access to them, right, we could get inside of our forefathers' mind about how they processed being Muslim. And it had nothing to do with being Arab. Islam, and even that, if you know what that is, you know what the original Arabs are. They're not what Saddam Hussein looked like. right? The original Arabs, or original Arabians, I should say, look like you. So that's yours too, but we don't fight hard enough for that. We have hard enough time fighting for Moorish American. Let's get that straight first before we try to claim something else, right? But please contact Sheik Edwards-El, R. Edwards-El, to get this copy of the Makarabin Files. It is a phenomenal record. I almost didn't get any sleep this week. My wife can bear me witness because this stuff is amazing. Like all the things you want, corporate filings, you have Brother Emil-El, the prophet, with the first Grand Sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We have his enrollment record from 1927, his advancements, joined the movement. Y'all mind if I share this with you? Y'all all right? I don't want to burden no more. Y'all all right? I can't believe it. Okay. Listen to the rate that he was being promoted. Okay? Emil-El is the brother that's underneath Prophet Noble Drew Ali in the picture in the front. Okay? This is Moorish Science Temple of America, March 12th, 1931. It's called Enrollment, My Advancement, and My Promotions. Joined the movement January 1st, 1927. And on June the 1st, 1927, I was approved of and appointed by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali as the first assistant chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America. That's 6 months. So from proclaiming his nationality, 6 months in, Prophet made him assistant chairman, right? And the following approved appointment, I had the support of the entire grand body with a unanimous consent on behalf of the Prophet's choice and appointment. And in August, same year, August the 1st, same year, I received an appointment from the Prophet as general chairman of the said Moorish Science Temple of America, and was made Grand Sheik under the Prophet in February 1928. So he had only been a part of the movement a year. Okay. I wrote insurance for the Prophet in the year 1928, and at the close of the said year, in the first annual convention, I was promoted to the office of, or rank of, Supreme Grand Sheik by the divine Prophet Noble Drew Ali, year and a half, Supreme Grand Sheik. This promotion by the Prophet took place during the first setting of the Supreme Grand Council, representing the Moorish Science Temple of America in a public meeting at 3140 Indiana Avenue in the month of November 1928. The Prophet made it very plain in 3 statements. He said that he was the Supreme Grand Head, Brother Emil-El was the Supreme Grand Sheik, and next to me, the Prophet, and that means that all the temples in this government. So he's talking to the whole national movement. And there's but one Moorish Science Temple of America, and that is mine, Noble Drew Ali's. And at an official meeting in February 1929, I was made shepherd of his flock by him and was told by him to feed his lambs and sheep. The same month, February 1929, I was called by the Prophet and told to come help him carry on his work. The call came as follows. So this is literally how it happened. It says, at the close of a regular meeting on one Sunday night, he, the Prophet, said to me, Brother Emil-El, what are you doing now? I told him I'm not busy at that time while waiting for repairs, because he was like a handyman. He said to me, don't look for any more work of any kind or job, but come with him. And said, I need someone to help me in my office now. As my work is getting so heavy, I will have to have someone to help me. Be at the office in the morning at 9:30 or 10 o'clock a.m. And if I'm not up, make yourself useful in the office till I come. He, the Prophet, said, there's no salary attached to this work. But if you can put up with my fare, and if you are willing to sacrifice with me, I will see that your rent is paid, I will see that your other expenses are paid, and that you have a little spending change. So, right? I agreed. Returning from a trip around to other temples one morning, the Prophet said to me, Brother Emil-El, he said, you will study up on, take this for instructions for yourself. You will study up on all of my laws to prove yourself, because you will have to do what I'm doing. You will have to go around to all the temples and report back to me. So read up on my Quran, questionnaire, constitution, and try to be perfect on all subjects so you may act intelligent along all lines of procedure. 20 minutes later in his office on the same occasion, he, Drew Ali, said to me, I find all of them, this is when the scandals were ensuing, okay? I find all of them want to sit in my seat, but at my absence, that is your station. But when I leave, lock the desk and put the key in your pocket. Now here's when confusion creeps in. You know where I'm about to read. Everyone, so I said that, he said everyone wants to sit there because there's where the money is. But I know who I want to sit there, and I know who I want to handle my money. And if you leave for any length of time, give the keys to Brother C. Kirkman Bey until you return. That's where the confusion happened. And which literally meant if you leave to go out of town and you give the keys to Kirkman Bey, and when you come back, have him give you the keys back. But that was straight, okay. And several weeks before the prophet passed, I was called to his private chamber for special instruction on the many ways of life, right? And it was done in a way one would never think that the prophet was going to leave this earth, but you would think that he meant that he was going to live on in the flesh. My final instruction came one night after being called from home by the prophet, and after reaching his home and hearing him speak through his mighty Godheads. He then asked me, he invoked Elohim, right? Well, speaking, it wasn't him speaking, it was speaking through him. If he asked, he said, if I were with him or were I with them? Okay? Because I've done too much for you to turn your back on me. I say I've done too much for you to turn your back on me. And if I thought you would turn me down after what I've done for you, it would be too bad. And it ends there. Islam? But, you know, you have a cultural legacy as Moorish Americans in this nation. Documented history. So stop lying to people talking about you don't have a culture. Stop lying to people. Don't nobody believe you, first of all. Because people know you had large movements in this nation, but we choose not to connect ourselves with them because we think it's fun being Negroes. Islam Moors, you know, the Moorish elders, Moorish American, you know, elders post the prophet. They had several statements they used to use because they got this from being around the prophet. And one of these phrases is, if you don't do anything else, proclaim your nationality. If you don't do anything else, proclaim your nationality, because one day that nationality card is going to mean something to you. It might not even mean something to you when you receive it because you don't understand it. Islam? You think the Moors that were with the prophet while he was in the form, you think they understood what he was talking about? You know, he first started teaching in 1913. Slavery was just declared out in 1865. Right? So you think they knew what he was talking about, the family of nations? Somebody just walked off a plantation, listening to a prophet talking about the family of nations. Islam? But if you don't do anything else, you know, proclaim your nationality, you know, and, you know, Acts 6 and 7 of Moorish Science Temple of America charge us with, you know, returning the nationality to our people. We're charged to do that. That's what we're called to do. And if we're not doing that, we're not doing our duty as Moorish Americans, right? When ones show interest in the prophet movement, it's our duty to teach them about the law, what would be on them, and to offer them, because, you know, this is a covenant thing, right? Covenant's contract. Contract is governed by three aspects, right? Offer, consideration, and acceptance. Islam? So when the prophet says, come all ye Asiatics, that's the offer, right? Then he gives you the master's word in the Quran, consider, right? Consider thou art the parent, right? Consider. And the acceptance when somebody says, I want to proclaim my nationality. Islam Moors? Is there anyone present that would like to proclaim their nationality this evening? Praise Allah. Islam, sister, please rise. Takbir. 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 Praise Allah. Round of applause. Praise Allah.
Allahu Akbar. Hayya ala salah.